Welcome to From Nothing to Profit, a photographer's podcast with Matt and Kaya, where each week they talk to photographers about what is working in their business now so you can swipe those ideas and grow your business faster.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to From Nothing to Profit. Today is our goal setting show, and I'm Kaya Bondurant, and I am going to be interviewing Matt Hoagland about how he sets goals throughout the year. And I'm super excited because I have some ways that I do goal setting, but it's not my main thing that I do. We have our New Year's show. We talked about word of the year, and that's really my way of starting the year. So Matt, I'm super excited to hear what you have to say about goal setting.
Yeah, it's really fun. This is something I feel like I kind of thrive in. I would love to know what my wife and employees think, whether I thrive in it or not, but it definitely helps me a lot, and I feel like it moves our business forward in a major way. So yeah, I'm excited to share what I have to offer.
Okay, so tell us about what you do when you set goals.
Yeah, so I think it's important to set goals every year because it's kind of like, for me, it's like a roadmap. You know, it's really hard to know where you're going unless you have a map to kind of tell you where to go. So goal setting is the start of the process of figuring out what the roadmap is for the year. And part of the reason that happens and the roadmap happens is because you're establishing priorities. As soon as you say, these are my goals, and there's actually, I think, a bigger part than goals, which I call an action plan, but we'll get to that in a second. But it establishes your priorities so that you can start looking at the world, your business, whatever it is, through a certain lens and decide okay, all this stuff coming at me, what do I need to pay attention to? Because, as you get a million opportunities in any given year to change things in your business. But if you don't have your roadmap and you don't have your priorities, you don't know which ones to take and which ones not to take, because they all sound like good ideas at the time.
Absolutely. I feel like I always come up with so many things that I can just run around like a crazy person. So yeah. So how do you do that? What kind of different goals do you set?
Yeah. So I have a couple different goals. So one of the things that I do is this is how I start the process. So I set a 5-minute timer, and I kind of just do I just write down everything I can think of and dream up of for the next year. So this case, 2019. So I'll set a timer, and I'll say, what do I want for 2019? And I'll just write down all these different words and brainstorm it and just get it all out on paper. And some of the stuff is so crazy that it'll never happen, win the lottery, I could write that down if I really wanted to, and I can turn that into an action plan and try to win the lottery. But that some of that stuff is so far fetched. And but the secret is I do put that stuff down, not that particular one, but I put really far reach stuff down. So, and then even the little things, and just that 5 minutes of quiet time by yourself writing it down, it's amazing what you actually write down. So
wait. Okay. So how long do you set the timer for?
So 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Did you say that and I missed it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just 5 minutes.
5 minutes. And then do you find yourself writing the same things down every year?
Yeah. I mean, there's some core stuff that I write down that's just kind of the same every year, but then kind of what drives our action plan for the year is some of the new things we write down that come from the clarity of writing those other things down. Let me rephrase that. So there may be something we write down 5 years in a row, and the reason it never gets put in place is because that's maybe not the right way to say it. But eventually you get clarity around that particular word, and it morphs into a new word that you actually are oh, that's what it actually means.
This is what I really want.
Yeah. So it may make more money may be written down for 5 years, but on the 5th year, you say it's not really about making more money. It's actually about making my business more profitable or something like that. And then it kind of changes the whole thing. So side note real quick, and then I'm going to get back to kind of goals, the kind of goals that I write. So one of the things that Allison did recently with my wife, which was pretty cool, is she I sent her a video, and then she actually did this, which was amazing because I don't even remember the video, but she took it into action, is they had you write down 25 things that you wanted to do. And then you're only allowed to pick 5 because supposedly there's science behind the fact that you can only pick 5 things to actually accomplish. Mm-hmm. And so there's 25 things she wants to do, but what are the top 5? And then once you accomplish one of those, then you can pick something else off your list, but you can only focus on 5 at a time. So that's kind of a side note that I'm going to look at doing this year. But with that being said, the kind of goals I set is I have 1 year goals. Where do I want to be from a year from now? where do I want to be 3 years from now? Where do I want to be just 3 months from now? And then I kind of have like these lifetime goals. They tend to be around like retirement or, long-term, super long-term things. So I kind of group, once I write down for those 5 minutes, I write down all my dreams. I kind of group those into like, are these 1 year things, 3 year things, 3 month items, or lifetime items?
Okay.
So, and the idea is I want long-term and short-term goals to keep me motivated, because you need short-term goals to be able to feel like you're winning, but then you need long-term goals to actually steer your life ship a certain direction.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And then the other thing I always focus on, and I'll get to this in more detail in a second, but I always make sure, people have probably heard this 1,000 times, but that your goals are SMART. And if you haven't heard it, the idea, I have it written down here. So it's basically, they're specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're realistic, and then they're trackable. And some other people have used, instead of attainable, they've used like achievable. Instead of realistic, they've said relevant. Instead of trackable, they said time bound. And I actually like the time bound one better than the trackable one. So I just make sure all of them are specific, measurable, and that I can actually pull them off and know that I pulled them off.
But this is not your first list. Your first list is like just everything you can think of. And then you start organizing them into the different categories, and then you change them to be SMART. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
So that's kind of just, that's kind of like the overview of how I view
the process,
how I use the process. So one of the questions people always ask me is like, how do I reflect on the past year? And, how do I actually get some of these ideas out of my head? Cause like, what do I ask myself to actually think about it? Cause, goal setting can be kind of overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a list of questions that I go through and answer. And I don't necessarily just do this in 5 minutes, but I definitely make some quiet time for myself and I answer these. And I don't always have to answer them just in one day. But when I'm reflecting, so I say like, what was the best part of this last year and what lessons did I learn? So that flushes out some ideas.
Okay.
What's the most challenging part of last year and what did I learn from that? So it brings up some different
the best
ideas.
Part, the worst part, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who and how did I positively influence somebody last year? So that brings up like giving back and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like who made me laugh the most last year? So that kind of was like, who do I probably need to be around more because I see them in a positive light?
Mm-hmm.
Who or what was I most grateful for last year? So that starts to make you think, oh, what was really good? And I don't know, just good reflection question.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a bunch more. I'll keep going. So what makes you feel what still makes you feel incomplete? So like, what are you still missing or what are you still thriving after?
Like frustrated about, or like I didn't get that done. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
And then I also have a sub question for that. Like, what will you do to handle it? So like that starts the action plan process of what can I actually do about that incomplete feeling? What would you change about how you managed your stress last year? So that helps you think, okay, what was stressful last year and what did I, in hindsight now, since I'm removed from it, what should I have done differently? What do you wish you would have done differently last year? That's just kind of a general question. Then switch back to the positive. What are you most proud of last year? And I always do, what are you also most proud of in regards to your finances? Because finances are really important to me. Unfortunately, a lot of my happiness and how I identify success and stuff is wrapped up in finances. So I just have to be very clear about that, but not everybody has to necessarily do the finance one, but
you just have to keep it balanced.
Yeah, exactly. Where did you find the most peace and calm last year? Just another way to think of ideas. And make you realize like this was a good thing. So I should probably move towards that, not away from it. What advice would you have given yourself at the beginning of 2016 or 2018? I'm looking at a list from 2016 right now. And these are just questions I've picked up over the years that I thought are good reflection questions.
So they're not specifically from any certain, like this is your personal list that you.
Yeah. And like one year I did the passion planner. And so it's probably there's a couple from probably that.
But it's a compilation of a bunch of different things. Okay.
Or, I went to a networking meeting or something and whatever. Yeah. What do you want to do less of this next year?
Such a good question.
Just like balancing the positive and negative of what I need to move towards and what I need to move away from.
Yeah.
What important relationships do you want to improve next year? What do you want to be most thankful for in a year from now? So that's just very forward thinking. What do you want to become an expert in next year? So again, that's forward thinking. And what are you the most excited about for next year? So those are some of the questions that kind of just help me bubble up ideas of where I was last year and where I need to go.
Okay. So you make your big list.
Yep. It's just
Like your 5-minute
dump.
list. And then you put those in the categories, and then you ask yourself these questions next.
Yeah.
Okay.
And these questions I just went over, they take a while. It's not like this. I just do this like in an afternoon.
Yeah. Like, do you do it over a certain number of days or?
Yeah, typically I normally put one good day in and get most of the way through it. And then I let it kind of sit for a couple of days, and I'll be like laying in bed or watching TV or something like that. And something will bubble up, and I'm like, oh, I'm really grateful for that. Or that was really funny. And I can add to the list a little bit, but I don't want to, it's all about reflection. So sometimes you just can't reflect on everything in a year, like in a matter of 10 minutes,
Right. Now, do you do this all by yourself, or do you dialogue as you're doing it?
I typically do it by myself.
Yeah. See, I'm such a verbal processor that I think I would have to do like a lot of it talking.
Yeah. And I'm a verbal processor too, but with this stuff, I mean, occasionally I'll ask my wife, like a question, like, maybe like, how did I manage my stress last year? And sometimes she can give me some real talk that helps. But I don't know. For the most part, I'm pretty by myself.
You want to see what you really think. Like you want to measure yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So then I have to actually turn them into goals. I have to start turning them into SMART goals. And so what I do is I go through a whole process where I have all this stuff written down, and stuff starts to get clarified. So some of those words that I wrote down in the 5-minute timer deal get clarified in some of these questions or whatever. And so then I start really prioritizing and cutting down this list of stuff that, I want to accomplish until I end up with some very clear goals of like, this is what I want to do. I want to, grow my business, maybe where I start. And then I actually realize like what I actually want to do is go from this many seniors to this many seniors, so I can start to get more clear about how I want to grow my business. Or so one year that we did this was really good. We said we wanted to grow our business. That's where we started. By the time I was done with this exercise, I realized that what I really wanted to do was add headshots to our business.
Okay. So
I didn't necessarily want more seniors, more weddings, or anything like that. I wanted a whole new product line. And so we were able to do that. And when I was super clear about it, then I knew that's what I wanted to do.
So do you take this and compare it to Allison, or are you the one who kind of comes up with the ideas and then she's like, oh, I like that. Let's do that together.
Yeah. And so when it comes to the business, I mean, I'll talk to everybody and say, here's what I think. What do you guys think? And I'm a little bit more reflective than they are about it. But then, I have to get buy-in and stuff like that. And that's kind of my next step after I do this in terms of turning it into an action plan. But the point I want to make with this is that you got to get really clear about your goals and narrow it down to just the ones that you really want to, that you think, are SMART goals in a sense. So are they very specific? Can you measure them? Are they actually attainable? Are they realistic or relevant to what you're trying to do now? And are they trackable or time bound? And some goals won't qualify for that because you won't necessarily know how to track it, or it won't be time bound. And so you just have to get rid of those. So I normally end up with 3 to 5 goals that I really want to work on.
Okay. So here's my question for you on it. Have we gone through all the process that you do?
There's just one last part where I turn it into an action step, but I can get to that in a second. Go ahead.
Well, here's what I want is tell me some an example of how a goal from the the first kind of 5-minute thing to the answer to a question what was the funniest thing, or who did I have so much fun with, to how you actually turn it into an action step.
Okay. So this is a good one. That has nothing to do with my business. So I apologize that.
Oh, I don't care. I think it's good.
That photographers are going to be bored with it. But so there was this, I brainstormed and came up with this idea that I needed to like take care of myself more, or I needed to stop self-identifying with work and money and stuff like that. So I needed to come up with something else. And so for years I thought about like a hobby, and that whatever that means, right? It was just too vague. And so as I worked through this process, I eventually came up with this idea that I really needed to do something different for myself. Like I really had to put myself first, which always felt so selfish, but I knew that's what I needed that given year. So then I went through some of these questions, and like there was questions like, how did you manage your stress? And I was like, not very well last year, and so how could I do it done differently? So let me look at some of these. Where did you find peace and calm? And this is where it led to this thing, is that I realized like I wasn't managing my stress well, and I was finding peace and calm fly fishing. So when I was going fly fishing, I was like, this is, like there's just so much good stuff going on. So what advice would you give yourself at the beginning of the year? Is like, well, remove yourself from the situation, and it's okay to go fly fishing. What is the best part, and what did you learn? And all this stuff. A lot of it started coming back to this idea that a lot of these problems and things I needed to move away from and things I wanted to move towards, fly fishing was going to be the catalyst for it. I could reflect more. I could have more time to myself. And I'm not a type of person that likes to be by myself anyways, but I realized that when I was doing that, it was making me a better person. It was making my relationship better. I was being a better boss and all these things. So then I moved into an action plan and figured out how to actually implement that in my life. So did that answer your question, or do you want me to say more?
Oh no, that's perfect.
Okay. So then I turn all my goals into action plans, and it has basically 4 steps. Like, what's the timetable? What resources do I need to make it happen? Who is it going to affect, or, who's going to be involved in it? And then I always come up with a backup plan if it doesn't actually happen. And
what does that mean? Wait, what does that mean? Like if you're like, okay, this isn't going to really work.
Okay. So like, let's talk about the fly fishing one, for example. So I say, okay, let me go through it and I'll tell you what my backup plan was. So, okay. So timetable, like you got to put a time to it, or put it on your calendar, or it has to be time bound. That's so important with setting goals and turning them into actions. So what I said is that I was going to go fly fishing 1 day a week, every single week during the year. So 1 day a week I was going to go. I didn't know how that was going to happen in the current situation I was in, but I just knew it was going to make me happy and make me a better boss, make me a better husband, all that stuff I said. So I was like, once a week, I'm going to go fly fishing, and luckily I live right next to a river. And so even if I was like, I'm just going to go on lunch, I'm going to go. And so rain, snow, 100-degree weather, I went every single week. By the end of the year, I was actually going more than once a week, because I then found people that wanted to go more often with me. And it was really awesome. So the resources that I needed was like time and space and, some equipment, but not really. But mostly the resources I needed for it was time and space. So who it was going to affect. So obviously my wife / business partner, and then my employees, and then my family as well. And I just had to let them know that this is what I was doing this year, and it was important. And they were welcome. They were more than welcome to go along with me, but this was something that I was going to do this year. And everybody was super supportive. So now it's an action plan. Once a week, I'm going to go fishing, and, I got to make it happen. But the backup, I always have a backup plan. Like if I don't get to go fishing this week, what can I do to make sure I stay in the right headspace that fly fishing gives me? And so I don't remember exactly what they were, because this was a couple of years ago, but I had like 5 things that I could do.
Like go to the fly fishing store, or spend some time looking online and buying things, or stuff like that.
Yeah. And one of them was tying flies. Like in fly fishing, you make your own flies that you fish with. And so that allowed me to do, when the weather was really bad, I could always take a part of a day and tie flies. And that was almost as therapeutic. It's not quite as therapeutic as the river, because catching a fish, there's like an endorphin rush too that makes you really happy. But I had some backup plans and some coping mechanisms if it didn't happen. But it was so crazy. So my goal was once a week. By the end of the year, I was doing like almost 2 days a week. And that was the most profitable year we ever had in our business.
Really?
You would think that like we would have lost some business because I was like not here 1 day a week. But it caused other people to step up. It caused me to be in a better space. So when I was here, I was way more effective, and it was just a really amazing year. And we still talk about it, and we haven't quite figured out why. I mean, we have some ideas why, but like we would have never guessed if Matt's going fly fishing one day a week that this would be our most profitable year. Like we would have never guessed that, but it absolutely was, hands down. So
that is really interesting.
So anyways, yeah. So that's kind of just to summarize real quick. Like do some brainstorming, and then I kind of organize them and pare them down, and then I turn them into action steps is what I do. So
okay, and then you have those lists of like thought, like triggers or questions that you use all the way through the process.
Yeah.
So do you have all this written out, or?
Yeah, I mean, I have the questions written out.
Okay.
Well, and I kind of have I kind of have it like saved in a PDF. It's like just my own chicken scratch or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So I can just go and print it out, and that's what I printed out for the show.
Okay.
And it just has a bunch. It's like tons of white space. So I just print it out, and then I just start working on it and writing on it. And
yeah, I always get irritated when someone's like, "Hey, download my goal setting list," and then I'm like, "Wait a second, nothing's on this page. This is an empty page. I have to do the work to put the stuff in."
Right.
But essentially, that's what it is. You've got your questions, and then you do the work of filling it in.
Yeah, and then I'll just give one more idea that I'm not very good at, but I've done in the past. That's kind of fun. Is I've gone to a couple of workshops where they've made us write a letter to ourselves that we're allowed to open up the next year.
Uh-huh.
And so sometimes it's fun to do the reflection questions and then write yourself a letter.
Yeah.
And then close it up and then open it up. And then it's pretty amazing, like what's in the letter the next year. Cause it's about like, here's what you're not doing right, Matt. Did you do it right this year? Did you improve? Or, last year we're grateful for this. Do you still remember that, or have you forgotten, kind of thing? And, that's always kind of a fun exercise. Cause you're like, oh, I did actually accomplish something, or no, like I still need to be more grateful for my wife every day,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So how do you keep them going throughout the year then?
It's really just those. It's really that action plan is what makes it happen.
Do you print it out? Are you like, how do you see it?
So for me, it typically has to go on the calendar.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Like with the fly fishing one, which is a terrible example for our podcast, but, it just had to go. Every week I had to schedule it. And so when I knew we were going to be busy, I just scheduled myself off like on Tuesdays. But when we were slower, I could actually like pick the week before what day I was going to go based on what was on the schedule. But it's got to go on the calendar. So I've done other ones where I've turned and my action plan is to like add headshots to our studio.
Right.
So then we came up as a group in our studio, we came up with a list of things that we needed to do. And then I put each one of those action steps into the calendar. So like on a random Wednesday, we have a space that said, make sure you call the Chamber of Commerce, to get a list of their chamber members or something like that, Okay. And then so the following
week, you do it. The way you get it to work throughout the year is at the beginning of the year, you create action steps that you put on the calendar.
Yep. And if they're in the calendar, they get done. If they're not in the calendar, for me, they just go on a piece of paper and they always get forgotten. Yeah. So one of the things, I'll tell you what I did last year for the studio, and it didn't turn out as well as I wanted, but it was decent, is one of my goals for the studio last year was to have way more Google reviews than anybody else in our area. Because I thought, okay, if everybody has like between 5 and 6, 5 and 20, call it, Google reviews, but I have 100, like we're going to get a lot more phone calls when people are organically searching for us, because they're going to be like, wow, that studio has, 100 reviews. So they obviously know what they're doing. So that was my plan. Long story short, the year is over and we're only at 45. So I didn't get to my 100 goal, but what it allowed me to do is I put some processes in place where we would, follow up with people after we did their order and, some different things. And it worked pretty good. I mean, we moved the needle a little bit. We didn't get as far as we wanted. So I want to figure out how to refine that this year and do it again. Cause that's a really fun, measurable one.
Yeah.
Like you can just literally Google yourself and measure it. But still, I think that's a really good goal, is if I could be at 100 and everybody else is at 20, I think it would help our business. And plus we're getting feedback along the way from our customers, and, we're reaching out to them afterwards to make sure that everything is okay. They're not just picking up their product and we're never talking to them. And there's a lot of really good business practices that get wrapped around it, but I measure it through Google reviews.
Yeah.
So.
Typically for me, I make my goals based on like how many sessions we do and, booking certain amount of things, but a lot of yours sound like they're not necessarily monetarily based or session based. They're just a lot more varied. Would you agree with that? Or would you say you do both?
Yeah. Cause we have key performance indicators we track on a daily basis, which are how many leads did we book from people downloading like our what to wear guide, our location guide, and then how many consults we booked from those and how many sessions we booked from those consults. And then,
so you track those, but they're not necessarily specifically goal related then.
No, we have goals for them, right? Like in December, we need 60 downloads to produce, 20 consults to produce, I'm just making up numbers, to produce 20 consults to produce 18 sessions. You know what I mean? But that's more like on a daily basis that we know, like that's what we need to be tracking to make sure we're ahead of it. Cause we know that those downloads for our guides are a key performance indicator for how 2 months from now is going to go. And then the consults that we're doing currently, we know that's going to translate into money the next month. So we can almost predict a month or two ahead if we're going to be up or down because of how many downloads we had or how many consults we booked. If we're down in consults, like in August, we know that we're going to be down in sales in September.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. But so that to me, that's a daily thing. And we have goals around that. But those are just like things that we just constantly work. These are a lot of the goals I set are much like higher level, and the measurable part is the hard one for me always to figure out. So it's always interesting when I figure it out, like, oh, Google reviews, and then the time bound thing is what actually makes it happen for me.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. So hopefully that was helpful for everybody.
Yeah, I'm curious. So are you going to put any of your lists on here, like any on the show notes?
Yeah, I'll definitely put the questions that I read so that people could just copy and paste them. But as I work on some of the stuff, I'll figure out a way to get it out to the world. And maybe, I don't know, we'll record in another month or so. We'll record some of this stuff and talk about what our goals and stuff are.
Yeah, I definitely want to give it a shot.
Yeah.
Because it's not something like I do that, like, crazy ideas list. I have one and I just add to it, like, oh, I want to be on the cover of this magazine or meet this person or, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I do like specific, like, the measurable things in the studio of, how many sessions and stuff like that, but not necessarily like specifically measurable ways of, like of starting a new product line or something like that. I don't necessarily measure it the same way that you're talking about doing it. So I like the idea of, because a lot of times if you don't book that many sessions because you have this goal and you don't do exactly that, then you feel super bummed out because you didn't do it, but not always do you have like complete control over that.
Right.
And so I like what you're doing here because these are things that you really do have control over.
Yeah. Well, and like the Google review one is interesting. Like, I think I learned the most from that one this year because it was something that wasn't high stakes. Like, if we didn't hit 100 Google reviews, our business wasn't going to be down 15% and we're eating top ramen. Like, that wasn't going to happen. But like every time I thought about it, which wasn't every day, but like once a week, I could talk to one of my employees or I could talk to somebody and say, hey, like, we haven't got a Google review in this long. And then they say, oh, well, you know what? We should reach out to so-and-so and they'll do it for sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, like, it drove really cool business practices because we were thinking about a number that wasn't the end of the world. So.
Yeah. It was just an easy peasy kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. So that's it. It's been fun. I mean, it's still a journey every day for me and every year, and I feel like I get better and better at it. And some years I succeed a lot and some years I don't. And that's okay. It's like, it's just a living being that just.
Yeah. Well, it's living your life intentionally. And so sometimes I'm guessing you're like, oh, I didn't really like that goal. I don't really want to make that one happen. Or, I wish I hadn't have done that. But then others, like you're fly fishing, you're like, okay, that was a win.
Yeah. I mean, it changed my life. I mean,
yeah.
It really did.
And
I mean, it
too,
was like, I'm still,
right?
what's that?
Allison's a fly fisher now too.
Yeah,
So.
now she fishes with me because she realizes like if I'm going to go one day a week that she should go. I have a trip to Mexico for a week to go fly fishing with my buddies. I would have never probably taken a vacation by myself without Allison and my buddies. But now I have a reason to. Like last summer, some people know this. I took a job at the fly fishing shop one day a week because they had one shift that they couldn't get covered by a college kid, and I was just happened to be in there talking one day, and I was like, Wednesday mornings until lunchtime, I'll come in. I don't care. And it was so good just to be in a different sales environment and be around different people than my employees that I made no money, to speak of, but it was just so good to get out of the office. And a lot of my friends are like, what are you doing? And you're like, you own your own business. You're doing all this crazy stuff. Like, what are you doing taking a part-time job at a fly shop? And I'm like, it just filled my bucket, So like it has that one goal has spread into my life a number of different ways.
Well, that's cool. So when do you normally do it? Like if this is a beginning of the year type thing, what's your timeline for what you're going to do for this year?
It normally starts around Christmas time as soon as, we're done delivering everybody's holiday cards and all that rush is over. Because, it goes pretty quiet as soon as the holiday is here.
Yeah.
And then I normally work on it, and then I normally have it wrapped up the first couple weeks in January. So it's normally around a New Year's thing. We did this exercise though a couple years ago, like in October, because we knew we had to do some resetting. And so we did it in October, and that was really good too. I don't think it has to be a New Year's, but that's just tends to be where I put it.
Yeah. Well, it's when you have the time to work on it. So that makes a lot of sense.
And the busy season's fresh in my mind, so I can answer a lot of these questions because it just happened.
Okay. So one last question.
Yep.
So once you have it and you've kind of worked it all out, then how do you present it to the people in your life, your wife, the studio staff?
Yeah. So I just tell,
you just schedule a meeting. Do you have it all written out?
If it's business oriented, I sit down with them and say, hey, here's what I think I want to do. And here's the action plan. What do you guys think about that? And
okay.
They're like, no, that's the dumbest thing in the world. We're not doing that. That's just doing more of something. We don't have time to just add more. But other times they'll add some clarity around it. And so, that's typically a meeting with Allison. Like my wife, we just have a discussion, and it's pretty informal, but I just say, hey, I came up with my goals for this year and my action plans. Do you want to hear them? And she's like, yeah, tell me tonight at dinner or whatever. And I just tell them. And then with like friends and family, it just comes up like as people,
right.
Like somebody will ask me like, oh, like how's business going? And it's like, oh, it's really good. And you know what? I have this crazy goal this year. I'm going to try to get to 100 Google reviews, and I'll just bring it up, and they're like, oh, that's really cool. I hope you could do it, And so,
you just talk it through.
Yeah.
But so with your staff, you have a meeting and you go over everything, and then you definitely let them have input into it.
Yeah. Cause there has to be buy-in from them.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal never is just to add more to their plate.
Yeah.
Or they'll say something, I'll say, here's my goal, and this is the action plan. And they're like, well, that's really terrible. We're already doing this and seeing traction over there. Why don't we just put more energy into that? Instead of doing a whole new thing in A, why don't we just put more energy into B? And so a lot of times they have some really good insight into that stuff. As long as the goal gets accomplished, I don't really care what the action plan is, as long as the goal gets accomplished, Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds great.
So, yeah. So that's goal setting.
That's awesome. I am excited to try it for myself and look through all the questions, and it's a good discipline. And I think I can see where it's had some really awesome effects in your business too.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We finished another episode of From Nothing to Profit, this one about goal setting, and we look forward to hearing how you guys have integrated it into your business, into your life. So please go to the website. Matt, is it
photopodcast.co?
photopodcast.co. Please go to the website. You can find all the ways to contact us there and share what goals that you've created for your business this year. We hope this is going to be a great help to all of you. So have a good day.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to From Nothing to Profit, a photographer's podcast with Matt and Kaya. Be sure to subscribe for more business strategy and ideas to help you create the profitable and successful business you've always wanted. See you on the next episode of From Nothing to Profit.